I think we're pretty fortunate to have the presenter we have with us today. Francisco is going through K-State grad school and getting ready to enter the workforce, and his knowledge in this area is incredible. Just from the few things I've done working with him and just picking his brain, helping put this together, I've really enjoyed working with him, and I'm looking forward to getting this presentation going. If you guys have questions, just type them in the chat box. I'll make sure we don't miss them, and then we'll do a question and answer segment at the end of it. So if you have any questions, just ask them. We will be happy to answer them, or Francisco will get them answered for you. But go ahead and take it away.
All right. Thank you, Ryan. Can you see my screen, Ryan?
Oh, yes, I see it.
Okay, so I guess everyone can see it. Anyways, well, thank you, Ryan, for the introduction. I guess as you just mentioned, we've been trying to,
Wait, your computer screen or
my. Okay, so I just
want to make sure we can see your computer. If you have a slide up, make sure that I can share that with you.
Okay.
Let's see.
Is that okay? Can you see it now?
Yes, now we see it.
Perfect. Cool. So as I was saying, so we've been working maybe a couple of months to put this together. There's some other things like some fabrication videos, some pricing, and things that will be likely to continue to work together. And well, as I said, my name is Francisco Najar. I'm originally from Monterrey, Mexico. It's you see here on the bottom. I came to Kansas in 2016, just to a little bit of a background of what I did. I was working for a retailer in Mexico. They're originally from Texas, called HEB. They do a lot of this is one of the major retail businesses in Texas. I was working for the Mexico branch. We got a little bit over 70 stores in Mexico. And so I was just very happy to work on the quality assurance and quality control group, and then I decided to come to K-State and get that knowledge and just to know more about the meat science. But I always had that interest to just know and put everything into layman's terms so that consumers and processors can understand the science, because that to me it's so important for people to just understand beyond research and beyond. So what's the actual application? But just a little bit of a context on that, and so a little bit about me, just to guys can know a little bit about me. So currently, I'm the instructor for the meat animal processing class here at K-State. I was privileged to help, and on this is a very hands-on class, where we go from animal welfare, dressing, cutting, all the way to retail cuts. And I think this is a very unique class that I was privileged to have Dr. Hauser when I got here, and he invited me to just come help on the kill floor. Now we do beef, pork, goat, and sheep. Actually, tomorrow we killing beef. So it's just a very good opportunity for to have that hands-on experience and pass it on to undergraduates. So this is an undergraduate level class. And so a little bit about me. I did my bachelor's in food science in Mexico. I graduated in 2014. I got also the opportunity to do a study exchange program in France and Ireland for 1 year. So I was able to go abroad and just get to know other cultures and other agriculture production systems, and that really helped me out. And then I came here, as I said, Kansas, to do my master's. I think throughout the presentation, I'll pop by a couple of slides where I talk about that research was also helping the small and very small meat processors and in pork quality. So we'll talk about that, microbial quality more specifically. And then a couple of weeks ago, I defended my PhD in meat science, and I was focusing on the sustainable aspect of meat production, looking at other parameters to evaluate or study freshness of beef. And I think I will be talking more about that as well. And yeah, so as Stephanie mentioned, we initiated a podcast in Meat Science last year in May with, I mean, during the pandemic, we had a lot of miscommunication. I mean, all of a sudden we had COVID, so it was like we had something new. I mean, a lot of changes when it comes to meat production. A few plants shut down. So it was kind of a very interesting time, and I saw that small and mid-sized meat processors, there was a need of education and a need of information about COVID. So that started off like that, and it just, I think, kind of exploded a couple of months ago, where we're participating and working with the American Meat Science Association as part of their official podcast. So I'm very proud of this achievement that they chose our platform to work with them and just keep interviewing people. And I think just for those of you that don't know what that is, it's just a concept, a podcast where I get some questions from processors, and I'll try to find the expertise, the expert of that topic, of that specific questions, and if there's a faculty of meat scientists in the States or in Canada, Europe, or I mean, we just go over in 20-25 minutes about that topic, and we address those questions through just conversations, and very candid conversations with colleagues in the globe, pretty much. So had, I think, over 15 to 16 universities. Next episode we had a very good friend and from the USDA, talking about grading. So some of you are exploring that avenue to have a USDA expected facility or open one, or you have an existing facility and you want to start wanting to start doing some grading. I think that's going to be a very good episode. And again, we really wanted to do that episode because there's a lot of concerns and people that, hey, now I'm a state inspected facility. How can I upgrade to be on USDA and just be open to more commerce? Because by being USDA, I'll explain here in a minute that some of the opportunities you have, and just for those folks that are listening, I think I got 11 people. Feel free to ask anything, stop me. I really want this to be a more dynamic conversation. So you guys have something that, hey, could you please elaborate more on this, or could you please explain more about this? Just so let me know. I'll be asking some questions about if you guys had that issue or ran into that a specific problem in your facilities that we can discuss. So I really wanted to start just sometimes we leave this into the last slide, but I think by 2040, 2050, 20 more years from now, we'll see a lot of changes in the way we produce beef. Like it or not, we'll see more plant-based products coming to the market. We'll see more of this trend with cell culture meat, cultivated meat in the lab. I think if we go back 5-10 years ago, it was not proficient to manufacture cell culture meat, but I think as other companies continue to invest money into this manufacturing, I think that's going to be a more doable in the future. So I think we have to be aware that that's something that's going to happen. And I don't think beef or pork or the meat consumption is going to go away. It's just that market is for some people, and that's really wanted to emphasize in now that just we need to be prepared for that. So I just talk a little briefly about my class. I think this is the last semester that I'm teaching it. It's kind of sad, but this is, I mean, animal processing class. I put a little bit of the objectives of the class, but we had from 12 to 16 students in the class per semester. We go over beef and pork slaughter, fabrication. We go over about why is meat inspection, HACCP. We do, I mean, we do all the fabrication, slaughtering. We teach them how to. So what are some of the hygiene practices that they have to follow when they come to animal processing? A lot of these students in class, they after they're done, they want to go back to the family, to the farm, and they want to be able to slaughter an animal and process it in a very hygienic way. We do, again, we go from primal to primal, then retail cuts. We do some cutting test demonstrations. How can they make money out of that? So I think that's one of the things that in the future we'll like to continue working with Ryan, see if we can do something with those small and just I guess I will continue here in a minute. But how many of you? I mean, we're 13 people. How many of you are an existing meat processor? If you can just, I mean, you can unmute yourself and just say, I don't know. Just I want to know a little bit about who's on, or who wants to learn more about that. So I guess if that's okay, since we're a small group of people.
Yeah, I'm fine with going with whatever direction you want to take it. So
Okay.
we'll just follow the questions.
Yeah. So anyone who wants to just unmute and see you, just volunteers to say I'm a beef processor per processor. What are some of the concerns that I have, so I can just try to go towards that direction. Okay, I guess I'm in the chat. Okay, calf operation. Small harvest. Okay, so we got some folks that are on the small side of things. So let's. So thank you for sending me that. So let me just continue with this. So let's go. I'll try to go over. Maybe it's gonna take me about 15 to 20 minutes to go. It's into this presentation. There are probably 20, 25 slides. Okay, work for that. Okay, I got Tyler, cow-calf operation here. Like to learn processing, lecturing for future. Then work for the KSRE Department of Agriculture. Following along. Okay, perfect. All right, so so a little bit about how we go over this this class with this ASI 361. We start from the very beginning of the class, is like an introductory to meat inspection. So we go over a little bit about the jungle. This is a book written by Upton Sinclair, and I'm sure a lot of you have heard of it. But that really sparked a lot of movement in terms of how can we better process, and I mean all the Humane Slaughter Act. Okay, we have one more here. We talk about economics of beef slaughter. Can smaller plants be feasible? More competition among processors. Okay, I can definitely talk about that. Then, so as I was saying, for the Meat Inspection Act, so the whole objective is just having that mandatory antemortem and postmortem inspection of livestock, and so that could allow inspection for interstate commerce. One of the things that I try to pass on to my students, that I mean we always focus on the 4 Ds: deceased, dead, disabled, down. So we have a unique facility here at K-State where we have a USDA inspected facility. So we have a USDA inspector on site that is overseeing what we do on the kill floor, but also on the processing rooms. So we want to make sure that all the animals that come through our establishment, they're in good health, and that they don't suffer while processing though. Okay. Another episode that I really want you guys to, if you're interested, I interviewed a couple, maybe 4 months ago, Dr. Kurt Vogel from the University of Wisconsin, and we talk about the Humane Slaughter Act. And he is he was a student of Dr. Tepper Granding, so he's got a lot of good input into this topic. But I think what really wanted to go when we talk about Humane Slaughter Act, and why do we do this, to make all the best for for the animals not to suffer. That's what we know. But there's a lot of other reasons out there for processors to follow an efficient stunning process. One of the main reasons will be also efficiency, and just you have, depending if you're beef or pork or sheep, if you're doing either captive bolt or electrical stunning, we want to be effective at that, because we know if we do it as fast as possible, that's going to make all things more efficiently and more productive in terms of the animals that we can process at the time. We have again an effective stunning method, just going to improve the overall quality of not improve, but just maintain the product quality. For the meat that we're processing, and we'll talk here in a minute about what are some of the things that we can have as a defect on meat when something can occur. But also ultimately we have we want to have a needless animal suffering process where the animal is not conscious, and we're able to knock it down, render unconscious without suffering. So another aspect of things that he pointed out a lot, and I guess that really opened my mind to a lot of things that I haven't. That a lot of the things is that when you're in the process just working, a lot of the times you just focus on what you're doing and you're not paying attention to other details. But he pointed out the safety of workers, and he meant more about the mental health of workers when you're doing a really humane stunning in a very humane way. So if the animal is not conscious, I think there is at some we have empathy for. As humans, we have empathy for animals, and I think that just helps for the overall mental health of the person stunning the animals, and I guess I never was looking at it from that perspective. And then also it has been conducted some research when they mentioned we have less stress overall. Not specific on the stunning, but less stress overall animal than before the animal is harvested. We tend to have less the spread of contamination. We're talking about those pathogens that can be spread through the hides, and so that's really important. So there's a lot of reasons as to why we have to have a stunning method, or a good process when it comes to rendering the animal unconscious. So just briefly, before I go more in depth about some of the questions that I had from processors, we've got to make sure that the animals, we know that the animals are contaminated. So these are pictures that I've taken throughout the semester, where it's imperative to just to keep everything clean. I cannot stress enough when I'm talking to my students, hey, whenever you touch the hide or touch the exposed tissue, you have to make sure that your hands are clean. And it seems like I've been just like my mom that used to tell you, hey, do this, do that. But I think after a while, you get that sense like if you touch anything and you're gonna touch the meat, you have to make sure that it's been sanitized. When we talk about hand tools, when we talk about hand saws, so everything we have to make sure that we do our best to keep the animal clean to avoid that contamination. So, and I guess after we did all the dressing procedures, and I really wanted to point out here because that's going to help me for that direction that I'm going for this presentation. Sometimes I had processors ask me, "Hey, what do we do after we dress I mean, either the beef or pork? We have it ready to go into the hot box. I mean, you want to extend the I mean, you talk about pathogens, food safety. We have a process, a step. We have to treat the carcass surface with hot water, with a hot water intervention, at least 165. We try to go on in our facility 165 to 180 Fahrenheit. That's our critical control point when it comes to when we talk about HACCP. But there are other things in one of the, so this picture that we have here with our meat lab manager, John Wolf, we had the opportunity to work with other labs here at K-State and more in the food safety, in the food science program, where we have a BSL-3 lab that we inoculate carcasses with could be either salmonella or some stec for the E. coli. Then the whole carcass, we try to see if by applying a antimicrobial intervention, we can reduce the growth of these pathogens of bacteria. And so there's a lot of benefit by adding just a hot water treatment or adding an antimicrobial intervention to reduce the presence of pathogens. And also, I mean, there's a wide variety of interventions that we can use. Lactic acid, citric acid, peracetic acid. So I definitely, if you have more questions about that, I can send you more information. And we cover that in maybe in a couple episodes. So I mean, if you guys are in the small and mid-size scale, I will recommend listening to, there's one episode with Dr. Acuff from the University of Arkansas. We visited about this. The importance of antimicrobial interventions in the meat industry. So moving on, this is part of my master's research. This work stemmed from the need. So here we have a very unique facility. Since it's for educational purposes, we have carcasses that may be stored for maybe a couple of weeks, 3 weeks. And we had questions from our USDA inspectors say, okay, if you're storing and hanging those carcasses for up to 3 weeks, we need to make sure that those are still microbiologically safe. Or from that perspective, what's the microbial load on the surface of these pork carcasses that have been hanging for an extended time? As you know, we have a meat judging team. And so we utilize those carcasses for judging purposes. So we try to get the best or the most out of them as far as time. So we wanted to just make sure that if we store these carcasses on our facility under these temperatures, could we do that up to 21 days? So that was the first phase, looking at the carcass level. And not optimal, I would say, for a lot of folks. But when it happened that you have to hang carcasses, pork carcasses for up to 2 weeks or 3 weeks, for some reason we don't typically do that in the pork industry, because I mean we don't gain a lot as far as aging. We may see that more commonly when it comes to beef, because we have that aging process that we intentionally have those carcasses hanging for maybe 1 or 2 weeks. But for pork, that's not the case. So, but there's certain cases where people may store these carcasses for a longer period. So we wanted to make sure that if they do that, it's still safe. So this is just a little bit about the moisture content on the surface. As expected, we know as the carcasses are in the cooler, we're gonna see more moisture going down. A little bit about the log CFUs, about the microbial counts. We found that the jowl had a more APC counts than the flank and the shoulder, but overall, our results indicate that we could store carcasses for up to 3 weeks, 21 days, without compromising the quality, the microbial quality of the carcasses. And then we're also interested, as a phase 2, if now that those carcasses have been stored for 21 days, what happens if we take the port pot, we take some subprimal out of that carcass, and we store it for an additional 35 days, because that's typically what may happen with some very small and small processors, that if you store it for a couple of weeks, then you fab it, then it's not likely you're gonna sell that immediately. So chances are that you just keep that meat in a vacuum bag for longer time. So we wanted to just look at how this grow, and so we determined that for an additional 35 days, it reached 5 logs. And when it comes to microbial loads, we always, in microbiology, I'm not considered a meat microbiologist by any means, but this was my master's project, and that was really very interesting to just get to know the other aspect of microbiology. But whenever we talk about microbial loads and talking about aerobic plate counts, when you look at literature, we go from 1 log to 7 logs. So some literature say that at a log at 6 logs and more, you start viewing some slimy production. So that means like it's getting spoiled. So just as a matter of fact, when we do that a lot here for shelf life studies to see what's the bacterial load on a certain meat product, but we could determine that 21 days with an additional 35 days, looking at pork blade steaks from the pork butt, you could do that without compromising the quality. And then I had actually I had a call last week from a small processor asking, or maybe not asking so much, but telling me that he had a complaint from a client, from a consumer, and how his consumer was telling him that the meat, he sold them, it was tough and chewy. And then he called me and started asking a lot of questions. Hey, we had this complaint, this never happened to me. And then we started digging more, and at the end of the day, we found out that meat, it came from an animal that was processed or was slaughtered within the same day. So sometimes we lose a little bit about, I guess, the basics of meat science, where you process an animal today, you cannot expect to, especially if the end consumer is gonna cook the product within the same day, that's not a good thing. But sometimes it's just some of the things where we have to just make sure that after we do the harvest, so at least we have to wait 24 to 36 hours after harvest for that beef to be fabricated and packaged. So is that clear? Has anyone been ever, I guess anyone can just unmute himself and tell me about this, if you have ever had questions from some consumer about this, because I think, to me, that really put a lot of things into context. Like, wow. So a lot of times we as scientists, we take a lot of things as granted. Like, okay, we know that we're not going to process and consume that meat from an animal that was harvested in the same day. But I mean, that, especially for those people that are new to the meat business, and we've seen a lot of this trend, that more and more new meat processors. So there's a lot of things that definitely have to be learned to just to improve meat quality. So another things that I got a question from, talking about lean animals and fat animals. That subcutaneous fat, I see in this picture, we see that there is that barrier of fat that it's kind of protecting the lean tissue from another, we call it cold shortening. I will talk here in a minute about that. So a low pH, we know a low pH in a living muscle, we know, well, before the animal is even harvested, we have pH close to 7, and then after we exsanguinate the animal, so during that rigor mortis, it's going to be setting in. We see that that contraction of the muscle. We can talk about this effect on beef and pork, but we can visually see this more in pork. We see this ham. We talk about water holding capacity and what's the effect of pH on the water holding capacity. So a lot of things, and especially now, where we have heavier cattle, and just to put things into context as to why I wanted to talk about this, we have heavier cattle because due to those plants that retain some cattle because they were not able to process because of COVID infections within the plant. So those feedlot producers had to hold on to some cattle that increase the weight of the animal. So we have seen an increase of the weight of beef, and that can cause that chilling rate to be different compared to a couple of years ago. And a lot of times we're looking into some of the complaints from consumers, especially from those muscles from beef will be in the round, but for a pork will be the ham, where we visually see this gradient of colors. You see that white and a more darker colors. So that's determined by the pH of that muscle. And typically a pale, soft and exudative muscle with a more pale color, we tend to have a low pH. As you can visually see on this picture that I wanted to put it there, we as the word exudative, we see more water migrating out from that muscle, and that's because of the denaturation, the proteins. But all of that has to do with temperature within that muscle, because we have this muscle we have from the round. This is a big muscle. The temperature, it takes longer for that temperature to go down. As far we compare it to other external muscles from the carcass. Anyway, so we had these consumers, this processor complaints from consumers asking why they were seeing this gradient of color in the round. I mean, these cuts from the ram. Sorry. So we just go over that, and we got some more drip loss when it comes to low pH meat or PSE. So I think that's a very good example when it comes to chilling rates and chilling temperatures. And it's not easy to say, well, I got heavier cattle, let's just turn the coal a little bit down. I guess I'm not a fan of doing that either, because I mean, you have to consider also where are you placing your probe when it comes to the temperature. Are you placing your probe, your thermometer in the round, deeper in the round? Are you putting into in the longissimus, in the ribeye, in the loin area? So that really depends on that. So as I just mentioned, chilling temperatures. And on this one, he also had another comment, and I think that came back to other Meat Science 101 about Thurriger. So he asked me, okay, what if I'm gonna process this beef and then I'm gonna freeze it right away because I really wanna get it out. I say, well, if you process a beef, you dress it, and you fabricate it, and then you try to freeze it, that's going to cause what we call Thurriger. That's going to make the meat tough when you thaw it out. So there's a lot of misconception as far as how can we manipulate the quality of meat. Pretty much when it comes to those concepts, those phases, the right immediately after processing, that temperature and chilling, that's going to have a profound effect when it comes to meat quality and the tenderness of the product. We know when we talk about cold shortening, again, going back to that subcutaneous fat, cold shortening, we don't have that subcutaneous fat, and we have this extreme cold and that wind within your hot box pretty high. That's gonna cause some cold shortening in the muscle. I think I got a picture here. Yeah, so you see the picture on the left. You see that a little bit of gradient in the color, as opposed to the picture on the right. So that's gonna. So overall, we know that whenever cold shortening, we put that meat into extreme cold or extreme temperatures, it's gonna tend to be tougher compared to the other meat that we didn't have that extreme cold. And that's gonna have a profound effect on meat quality and the tenderness of the product. Now we talk a little bit about PSE, and are you guys so far have any questions? And I can go back. Just feel free to stop me. But here we talk about high pH beef. Why is that important? We continue to have that in the meat sector. Consumers are not used to that. That's an economic loss, and that could be the opposite when it comes to PSE. So here in a minute, I will talk more about this, about our cutting. So then we mentioned that the chilling rate and that temperature after the animal is being slaughtered, that has a profound effect on the meat quality. But also we know that proteolysis, of that aging, and I think this is another question that I've had a lot from consumers, difference between dry aging and wet aging. So when it comes down to how meat is typically processed or typically stored after the animals are harvested and fabricated, a lot in the meat industry they will tend to have vacuum packaged meat, and then we will have some breakdown of proteins. We have this process called proteolysis, where meat is going to undergo this proteolysis, and it's going to make meat more tender in very layman's terms. Typically, depending, we have the different muscles may have a different proteolysis rate, but we have maybe an average between 10 and 14 days to optimize the tenderness of that specific product, and we can definitely do that before we freeze a product. So I would not recommend. Again, that's going to depend a lot on your process. But if you want to optimize the tenderness of the product, I will recommend at least 10 to 14 days of aging under refrigerator temperatures. Let's see, the 34 to 36, I would say, Fahrenheit. We don't definitely we don't want to freeze the meat, because that's gonna interfere with the proteolysis process. So then the beef processor called me asking about, okay, if I leave the carcass in the hanging cooler, would that also be will have dry aging occurring? So that was one of the questions that we had, because again, I guess there's also misconception when we go to a retailer or a retail store. We see that those chambers of dry agers, they're in the bag, they're dry aging in a form of, let's say, a ribeye, or dry aging a strip loin. That's dry aging, but that's in a muscle instead of a whole beef carcass. A lot of it, when we talk about, okay, are we gonna hang beef for 2 weeks? Well, you're gonna gain, absolutely, you're gonna gain more. You're gonna optimize the tenderness by doing that, but you can optimize that as well by using wet aging. You may have different flavor profile, but the chemistry of that is like that's gonna still occurring. But maybe there are some cuts, like some cuts from the shoulder, some cuts from the round, that even if you age it, even if you dry age it, you're gonna get more tenderness. But as far as feasibility, it might not be very feasible to dry age around. So a lot of people, they will. I've seen a lot of people fabricate, get the strip loin, the ribeyes, separated from the side, and then everything else they fabricated and put in vacuum bags to have that wet aging, and they'll dry age a high-end cuts like the ribeye, the strip loin. So I guess that's one of the misconceptions that I've seen as well, when it comes to aging, or the protein degradation process. And this talk, I guess that this slide, I took it from a talk that I did for folks from Mexico. They might have a different genetics, and not even those folks in Mexico, but in Brazil, or some even folks in southeast in the U.S., Texas, Florida. They may have a Bos indicus influenced cattle. There's some factors that affect that aging process when we talk about genetics, but when cattle that is with a more Bos indicus influence, that aging after the animal is harvested that we talk about, it's interfered by another enzyme that can cause some issues there. So I had a very, very good and interesting conversation with Dr. Phil Bass from the University of Idaho, talking about other strategies to use for those processors that are located in those areas to optimize tenderness. I guess this one, I just wanted to just put things into context again, that this was from last year, that in the talk that I did for Cattleman's Day. And so we're going to see more retailers trying to open their own processing facilities. Does anyone have any questions so far for this? And I know someone asked me about the economics. Who was that?
Yeah, Tim asked that on chat.
Okay. Yeah, we can definitely talk about that. But from what I mean, I guess I can ask you another question back, Tim. What do you mean by smaller plants be more feasible? Are you processing beef or pork? Or what's the? I guess we can continue this conversation like later if you want, but because I think if you give me more details, I can better understand what you're trying to say. So, does anyone have any other questions as far as I mean, I tried to go over different things in a very short period of time, but anyone?
Tim, you can unmute and ask questions if that helps.
Okay.
Did you see
Anything? I
that
mean,
chat? Did you see that chat comment?
okay. Smaller production facilities. So I can talk. So for example, I have one one processor out in Salina that he has maybe a 3,000 head of native Angus cattle, and I think one example of that, he wants to go organic. He wants to go grass fed. That's one of the things, like he decided, because he knew that by is I mean, just for that niche market, if he goes federal, he'll have the opportunity to do some commerce on the coast, where a lot of those high-end restaurants may be able to buy a ribeye from native Angus that it was grass-fed and non-antibiotics and organic. So I think you have to know your market first. What's your market, and based on what your market is, you can start doing some calculation, some math, as far as, okay, if I want to get out of this much of this from this product, depending upon the place that I market that product, that I sell that product, could I get a better price? For example, we did an extensive study, and for him to to break even sooner than later, he really wanted to do that organic, because he knows, okay, if he's going to process maybe 50 or 60 head a week, is not that much. But if he goes federal, and he's making sure that this product is purchased at a very good price, and those high-end restaurants, I think that's we need to talk more about the market for everything to be more feasible. May not be the best case for him to sell his product in Kansas, maybe because people in Kansas may prefer something else and not pay an extra for a grass-fed organic cattle. But maybe there's some cities, some folks that may want to do that. So. Okay, so Tyler, can you elaborate more on pigment changes, loss? Does that affect taste or just appearance? Very good question. So actually, this week I had a very interesting conversation with Dr. Dielger from the University of Illinois, and we talk about this specific topic. And when it comes to pork, and what we talk about specifically juiciness. And we have this idea, or some of the old folks, or some people have this idea, that when it comes to pork, you have to cook it very well done. And sometimes when you overcook some product, you have that same juiciness, and therefore, that eating experience is not going to be suitable for that consumer. There's been some research that you can cook products or a pork chop at 155 degrees Fahrenheit, and you would be good if there is a little bit of pink in the inside from that pork chop instead of just overcooking it. So Tim, is there a way to track different cuts of meat as animal broken down so you could say the steak came from this animal? You mean traceability? Yeah, so that's, yeah, so this is, so you have a traceability. For example, in our facility here in K-State, we typically we have a record for every animal, so we know which animal is which. But I don't understand, I guess, your question. Do you mean for marketing in a different for a different segment, or I guess we can, I mean, I don't fully understand that. But and if that's if you can track different cuts, yes, you can. So I got last question from Tyler. So darker looking steak in your picture tastes different than the lighter. So that's a topic that it's a controversial. If we talk about some people, they will tell you that I mean, there's more water. The pH for a dark cutter, it's close to 6.5, and some people will argue that it's more tender because it's got more water. So, but other people may say otherwise. As far as research, I've seen people reporting the two things, that it's less tender than commodity and more tender than commodity. Definitely we'll keep getting more research on that for sure. All right, Ryan. All right, if there's no one else, thank you for your time, and I really appreciate you guys' time and just for being here today. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks everyone. We'll get this posted on our website, and we'll send this to Francisco too. Post wherever he wants. Get any more questions? I'll post my email. You can send me an email, or I can get you in contact with Francisco for better answers. But I'd like to thank everyone for coming, and hope you enjoyed the Zoom meeting.